me, yeah. When you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you.
Eduardo Live, and now we're back again with Empowering Monday with Dr. Argelis A. Ortiz, actually from United States, and I'm broadcasting from outside Oslo, Norway, all the way to the internet with all these amazing people that I think what they all have in common is like passion, and they like to share their knowledge with us. So we thank you all for that. Dr. Argelis Ortiz, tell us, how did it all begin for you? Like, where are you living today, first of all?
So I live in Los Angeles. So I live in a small city up in Los Angeles in California in the United States.
Professor, executive coach, founder, principal, consultant, helping leaders of color to seek upward mobility in their social service careers. That's impressive. I would love to hear that story. Like, where did it all begin and brought you to where you're here today? Tell us the story, Dr. Argelis Ortiz.
Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me here today. The story is about 40 years old, so it began even before I was born, when my parents immigrated from their respective countries. So my mom is Guatemalteca, so she's from Guatemala, and she immigrated around the mid-70s to Southern California. My dad was Mexican, and he immigrated around the same time. They met in a small town here in Boa Heights. It's part of Los Angeles, but it's also a neighborhood that was primarily immigrants, primarily a Mexican-American immigrants. So I was born, and I was born in the 80s when there was pretty rough, sort of a lot of racial tension, a lot of immigrants being kind of pushed aside because of economic needs. And where my parents did their best is they knew that my sister and I needed to focus on education. They needed to focus on making sure that we got something out of our education that they didn't when they were in their respective countries. So I began really focusing and enjoying what education brought, having great role models, having people that were educated, having other ways of thinking about the world, and that was really exciting for me. So throughout my elementary, middle school, and high school career, I always saw teaching as a way to giving back to people who looked like me, who had similar experiences. A lot of experiences that I was living, I was unaware of because I was first generation. I thought everybody spoke Spanish everywhere, and it was normal for myself and my peers to be in our community. And it was until I began attending college and realized that everybody has a different story and everybody has had a different path to get to their story, and by having a different path, they've gone through a lot of different things. And I always compared sort of people of color through people who have been more privileged and people who didn't have the similar struggles, and people who didn't have some of the things that happen when you're growing up, or some of the needs weren't necessarily met. But the great thing about people of power or people of color is that we definitely have creativity and intuition, and we're really familial and passion, like you mentioned, Eduardo, that passion just drives everything we do, whether it's a passion for business, a passion for healthcare industry, a passion for broadcasting. I mean, it's never ending, and that is our great equalizer. I think education and passion levels out to, doesn't matter if you have come from wealth or don't. It ends up leveling out the playing field, in my opinion.
I took it very personally when I was like maybe 18, 17, because I started to see these kind of roofs, like I saw all these leaders, right, on the top of society were like Swedish, and then it was like very few like entrepreneurs, very few leaders, and I don't like limits. That's my thing, I hate limits. When somebody tells me, Eduardo, you can't do that, I like look at them and say, okay, let's watch me,
Yeah.
Because I will do it. And that's the thing. I don't like people. The worst thing like you can say to me, like if you don't like me, is to not do something, because then I will do it, So I think like it's a mixed thing between you want to like and and then you have this third thing is that you want to make change. When you reach a certain level, like people listen to me, I see that, okay, I can say something that people can listen to, and they do, and then you want to change, right? Like, why should it be like this? Like, why should I have limits because like a color of skin or whatever, like, for me it's like, and also I have a big heart for inclusion and diversity. And I think that comes because I can feel with them how it's feel to be like a minority and how to be left besides when everybody's getting the cream. I don't like that feeling at all, So I can truly alienate, like, how can I say, share the feeling with the people, that are minorities, that have disabilities. I feel one of them, actually. Still today, I feel like one of them. I don't feel empowered at all or like privileged in any way at all, to be honest.
Yeah, and I don't think it leaves a lot. I don't think it doesn't matter how much success you have. There's still this chip on our shoulder about becoming better, not letting our people down, being a great role model, right? That there's still this always pressure, responsibility that one has. It doesn't matter how far you achieve. And I can't speak for my counterparts, but I could speak for every potential movement I've made in my career or my profession. I made it a point to bring people back up with me, because at some point somebody gave me that chance, right? At some point somebody said, you know what, let me see how this guy does it. Let me see if he's trustworthy, and not only not to let that person down, but not to let this whole responsibility of my people, responsibility of all the work that my parents went through growing up, right? There's this whole like push from the back about how to become your best self. And the chip's still there, right? Doesn't matter if Dr. Ortiz gets a few grants or he gets a few more classes, like the chip's still there, and it's still pretty proud, I think. So it's a version of a pride and justice, right?
I think the ship does not go away. It's still there. Like, it doesn't leave one. And I think it's good in a way, but also I can feel a lot of stress sometimes that I have to live up to stuff for other people. And maybe I don't want to do that. So, like, I have periods I just want to be introvert. I don't want to like be social Eduardo, like talk to everybody and like be there for everybody. I just want to be with myself, like with my own time, And then I can feel that ship, because I get guilt that I don't want to be there for everybody because people are used to that. And I have also become used to that,
I have a different type of guilt, and it's more about making big moves and taking big risks, right? So if I make a big move and a big risk, it impacts myself and my family, my immediate family. But sometimes it might feel like you're leaving people behind if you take such a big leap forward, right? So that tends to be where my guilt comes in, right? Like the fact that if I cross this bridge or I cross this ceiling, how am I still going to be able to pull people up if they're so far away from that particular ceiling or that bridge? But it's a challenge, and I like taking that challenge because I shouldn't be the only one in that room once I cross X risk, right? I shouldn't be the only one representing Latinos or representing males in certain spaces. So I want to be able to bring people back up. So I take it more of a it's a guilt, but it's kind of just for a period. But I know the challenge is going to be bringing people up, right? People of color back up to where I'm at.
As I see it, like my role as a leader is to lift people up, If
Yes.
I could make other leaders, that's for me like the ultimate reward. Like when people grow by themselves, I don't need to tell them what to do. They will just do, I just tell them, I would like to have this, And then
Yes.
we don't need to say anything more because they are appropriate to do that. That was the reason that we took them in, right? You don't hold them by the leash, right? So how I look at it, I say like it's the opposite, that I'm so privileged that all these amazing people like designers, engineers, project managers, they want to work with me, It's like I see it the opposite, right? Because when you have the opposite of that approach, it's like everybody has to serve you, right? And then you become a boss.
Right.
You're not a leader anymore, right? Like a leader, and I think there's a misconception in the industry between the both. And it could also be cultural, right? In some areas, it's like more like the leader type is more like bosses or patriarchal kind of
Mhm.
hierarchy systems and are like models how you lead, you know. But in Norway, it's not like that. It's very flat. One day you can sit and like have a lunch, and then you sit beside the CEO. Like that's how you do it. In Chile, maybe they have one room for all the executives to eat, like the executive restaurant. We don't
Mhm.
have that. It's like,
No, there is definitely a structure towards how people think leadership should look like, right? There is a misconception between a manager and a leader, or a supervisor and a leader. Um, that whole saying about if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, take people with you, right? So the further one wants to get, the more people and different aspects that you don't have, you should have with you. So I agree with you. I agree that we're privileged for being in such a great team environment I think we selected each other, right? The reason people keep on coming
yeah.
back to work with me is because we get along, but also there's a certain a relationship there to make sure that it's fun, it's easy, even though it's heavy work sometimes, but it doesn't feel like it's a drag, right? So yeah, there has to be this back and forth relationship about feeling good and happy to work with each other. Yeah.
But I think like you also put the values and the culture there, right?
Mhm.
That was the reason you hired them. Like they fitted inside what you wanted to be, right? Or what you wanted this like family to be. And when I speak about company, for me, it's almost like I say like work for me is my second family. And I think all passionate people have the same kind of terminology, because we're going to waste like, or not waste, but like we're going to use half of our life
Yes.
in these companies. Like if I'm not going to have a good time, why should I do it? That's how I think. Like life is so short, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Life is short, and also having different perspectives of different type of people or colleagues makes it that just much more interesting. And that's where I think creativity comes out of, right? This rub between friction and misunderstanding, and then there's like, well, this is what I meant, this is what you meant, and how do we meet in the middle, and then how do you get something better from out of that? Because if it was only my way, then man, that would be a really straight and narrow way to do things. But if you bring other perspectives and other friction there, I think that's where you get the sparks, that creativity spark.
Yeah, and that's what I'm working with when I said that I'm working with like my Latino side in the like Scandinavian landscape. Because when I get angry, I will not yell at people. I will not bite anybody. But for sure, they will notice that I'm annoyed, And I will tell you, like, if I need to debate somebody, I will do it. Like, I'm not looking at people's like, oh, what title you have or what role you have. If I think you're wrong, I will tell you, like, in a good way, right? And then maybe we have this discussion, right? And then people get annoyed. And my experience is that when people get annoyed at each other at work, the thing they should do is try to put the fire out as soon as they can. Like maybe let it rest for one day, everybody go home, take a good
Right.
sleep. But second day, you need to talk. Do
Yeah.
not let it go on days after days after days, because what I noticed is that it can become this big gap that then you can't bring it back, right? It's like it's too
Yeah.
late, like if you let time fly.
And it's divisive, right? It becomes of choosing sides, right? Do you believe this side or do you believe that opinion? And then you divide the team and you begin dividing the ideas. And yeah, it doesn't become fun to be in that environment after a while. And not saying fun meaning like, parties and happy hours, but fun meaning like engaging and creative, and fun meaning the passion there, right? So once you start having divisiveness in there, even if it's leader between leader or colleague between colleague, it feels it, and it throws the aura around, and it just kind of skews the passion for that project or that work. Yeah.
I think like Scandinavia, we have a lot of things we Latinos can learn from Scandinavian. One is like come in time for the meeting. That's the first one we could learn.
Yes.
Like second, we could learn is that to have flat hierarchy, because that's the best way to do it. But how I believe it, and that's my personal opinion, and I stand for it all the way. And the second and the third we could also learn from this like Scandinavian people is to be more organized, like not so much mañana, you know.
Got
They
it.
are very organized. But what they can learn from us is to let the feelings come out, you know, because
Yes.
okay, I'm a Latino, you know, so I get annoyed and I will say it, you know, like bah, 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 bah. This is how it is, right? But they say nothing. So what they do is that we have this expression, like when a Swedes get very angry, they put these stickers on the car, like on like
The bumper sticker?
yeah, like they put the bumper stickers, like no to, I don't know, like if it's politics, like no to Trump or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they do the same at work. Like they don't tell you anything, but you will notice it because communication will stop. They will work against you instead of with you. And for me, it's like, it's better to settle the dust, right? Like do the fight and move on with your lives, like, and then we can move forward. Don't take it, like, don't keep all these feelings inside because they will come out, you know. And usually you see that when you have this, I still remember like when I started like my first company and we have this Christmas dinner with a client, and everybody has been working for, I think, like 6 months, right? And the tensions were so high and people haven't spoken out, right?
Okay.
So when everybody got drunk, for me, it was like, you have seen this, what's the name of these American guys that do all these stunts? They have this...
Jackass?
Yeah, it was like that movie was that party. I can tell you, like somebody was wrestling with one of my guys and they did this big hole on the wall. It was a total chaos, you know, and because they don't let out the steam, you know, in small portions. So what they do is that when they do it with a big bang. And I think they should learn that from us. Live with your feelings more.
Yeah, and just be able to express it, you know, with some sort of passion back and forth, but have a civil conversation about it versus a really personable, right? Because if you're making it about the task, or make it about the task, right? Don't make it about the person or the lack of things the person has, and yeah, that's hard. That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that culture difference between the U.S. and Scandinavian countries, because I could see how. Here, there is a lot of depends on what industry, right? But there's a lot of ways to talk to your colleague, or to put it in passive aggressive ways, like you said, sabotage the project or sabotage the relationship. But I wonder if now with this really paying attention to diversion, being diverse and having inclusive perspectives and thoughts and people, if that's going to help both sides, right? Would it help the U.S. side in being more understanding of a variety of perspectives, and would also help you guys about understanding other ways to talk and not just hold it in.
Yeah, and there's another one that is that's also like similar, like there's so many fun like cultural differences, right? But what I have learned is that I learn from all cultures. Like I'm a multicultural person all the way. I love multicultural teams. For me, they are the best. Like if I can choose, I will have this thing, you know, like each team must have one people from one continent. That's it, you know. And if we can get an alien on board, we will do that, you know. I love like this. I love dynamics. I love like diversity in all levels. I love that because it brings so much out of people, you know, like in personal growth. You learn from each other. You learn about new perspectives. Yes. And everybody analyzes the problems from different angles because they have different kind of leadership schools, different kind of engineering school. For me, that's the ultimate team. You know, it's like people that are mixed from all walks of life, of races. So I love that. I love multiculturalism. I do that.
No, that's great, and I think when it became sort of the buzzwords to talk about diversity inclusion, for most companies, for the most people, they look more like a checklist, right? Like, oh, do I have this person? Yes. Do I have that person? Yes. But that is not the intention behind diversity inclusion. It really means on the inclusion side, age, ability, gender, sexual orientation, right? Like there's a lot of opportunities to bring in other types of perspectives. And I think that's the ultimate inclusion versus let me just check it off that I have it in my, payroll here. But no, like, do you really have all the perspectives? Do you really listen to it and not just have it there because it's a good checkoff box?
So what is true diversity? If you if you want to implement it in a company, like let's say that, okay, I want to have more diversity. Like, what should I look at? Should I look at like the clients demography, or like what type of clients you have? Should I build based on that, or what are like the perspective or characteristics? Maybe I want more innovative people. I want, because I have a lot of not so innovative people. What should we look about in true diversity?
Great question. The way I see it, and the way we try to help out in the org that we run, is we have the ultimate clientele, right? The people that we're serving, and I'm speaking for sort of social services or education-based sector, right? So there's a clientele that we're serving. My biggest push when we try to do consultation or coaching is that, do you have the people that you're supporting, does it mirror the people who are helping them? Right? Are you going to have people who have been through those streets, those shoes, to be able to relate to people right away and be able to say, you know what, this is how I got through it. How are you going through it? Right? That it looks similar to your clientele. One, and then two, that not only that it's a mirror about what your clientele, but also is it an opportunity to bring in other folks with other perspectives that are, quote unquote, the enemy of their clientele, right? The enemy, or the people who they've always rubbed against, so that they see that there's positive people that look like that, right? So that they don't just have this whole perspective of, well, this type of person is so evil, this type of person is just not good for me, but that there are positive people out there, right? And speaking for the nonprofit sector here in Southern California, it is fairly white people heavy at the top. Everybody kind of middle management, not everybody, but a lot of people middle management and lower, they're kind of people of color, they're people who've kind of rose through the ranks. But at the top, there's still a lot of decisions being made without having that background context of what it is to be that client, or what it is to have gone through something like that. So that's what I think potentially through true diversity could look like, is a representation of your clientele, but also a positive representation of the people that they feel they rub against, or a positive representation of people that they fear, right?
When you say like in California, that's like, for me, it's like Cali. Like people say, where are you from? Like Cali, right? It's like, for me, I like think Latino. I think the whole world, when they say California, you think like first you think like Latino, then you think like sun, and then you think all these other things, like, right? Yes. And so for me, like, that you're telling me that, are we talking about like 50, like 60% or 80% or 90% that of the people in the absolute top level that are like not minority groups?
Yeah, no, closer to 90.
Closer to 90. That's for
and
me.
And that includes executive directors, that includes board level, that includes funders, right? I mean, it includes a lot, right? So it's not just the CEO I'm talking about that sort of C-suite level, the board level, and then all the funders and all the investors. So it's still fairly imbalanced.
Why that? How come that 2020 we're still here? Like, and I imagine that it looked the same in the 80s, right? It didn't look much better. It probably looked worse, right? It was like 99%. Now it's 90. At least it like increased.
Yeah, at least it's an improvement.
Yeah. And how much? And the population in California, what is like the how many percentage would you say, like, or like non-white versus like white?
No, it's still a high Latino percentage here. Over 51% Latino or Spanish speaking, and then the African American is next, the next big chunk, and then Asian, it tends to be the third big population. But white tends to be a minority here in general, as compared to all the other ethnicities, right? I could only guess there's a what would you call it? Like a historical sort of way of keeping leadership or keeping these roles at a certain type of personality perception, and it tend to have been historically people who were being able to attract other funders and being able to attract people that brought in money. And that is not to say that people of color cannot be fundraisers and cannot be C-suite level people. It's just been, we're fighting the historical kind of ceiling, and little by little we're crushing through it. Because like you mentioned, even 15, 20 years ago, middle management didn't even look like this, but it's turning, right? And it's becoming a bit more inclusive, ethnicity and sexual preference wise and everything.
And of this 90% of like the people that are on the top, I imagine is like MBA people from like Harvard.
Somewhat, and sometimes it's interesting because it's not even the necessarily degrees they have behind their name, but it's more about the wealth and connections they were to bring. So that's another big fish we got to figure out, is that the thought is that people who at a C-suite level can bring in bigger cash into an organization, and folks who do not have those connections might not be able to do that as easily. So yeah, sometimes it is education based, but mostly is
Connection based.
Yeah, who could bring that cash in? Right?
That's what I try to like explain, is that there's an expression, it's called like the glass roof. And that is what we experience. We experience the glass roof. It's like nobody can see it, so nobody can point it out, but it's there, like everybody's seeing it. It's visible, but it's not visible like on the books, right? It's not written on the company website, like, oh, by the way, Eduardo, the glass roof is here for you. It's not written, right?
Yeah. It's not written, but it's pretty explicit, right? When you look at the bios or the org chart or the breakdown of structure, then you'll see, oh, okay, there's a lot of this type of role being occupied, and where do I max out? How far could I get, right?
Yeah. And usually what happens is that people like us, when we max out at a company, we start a company. Like, we don't wait for people to give us the opportunity. I don't want anybody to give me any opportunity, because I'm making the opportunity. Like, people like us, people with passion that work hard, we're not waiting for somebody to like give us a hand, like they say, right? Like, we're going to help you up, to be with us. I don't want to be with you. I want to change you. Like, for me, like, you have nothing to give me. Like, it's the opposite. We can give you a lot. If you open the doors for us, we can give you a lot. It's not the opposite, that you will help us, to be honest. And the problem to like breaking structures in when we have like roof glass in society is that they are inherent. It's like it's like a social inheritance, right? You inherit these people with influence and all these kind of things. So even a C-level student can become a president, right? That is inside the power structure, right? But if you're not part of that like power structure, if you're a C student, you can't even become manager at McDonald's, like people like us. And for me, like, I'm how can you say, like, I take action when I see stuff, because I don't accept that, because I'm a humanist. I believe that all people should have the same equal rights, and the only way I think we can change things is that we need to unite, we need to unite, and we need to help each other to growth all the way to the top. Anybody that is moving there, we need to stand behind that man or woman all the way up to the top. We need to support, and that's the thing that what I'm seeing now with like the work of Frank Carvajal, like all these people, they're doing that, and I support them 200%, because I think that is the way to do it.
Yeah, I think there's a responsibility there for people who are even an inch forward. You got to let other people how you got there, right? There's a responsibility of slingshotting people ahead of you, and not be worried about that I wasn't the first one there, or where's my ego that I didn't get to be the one that set the precedent, right? Like, it's okay to be able to share that responsibility. And I think that I go back to that, together we'll go farther, right? And further. It's interesting about the glass ceiling and beginning your own thing, because that's kind of where I landed a few years ago, where I was already in a sort of nonprofit role, and then I was also teaching, and I began doing some consultation on the side with a friend of mine, and now he's my business partner, who said, we do this kind of naturally, right? Let's try to get some projects out of here. Let's try to empower more people by connecting and building our own organization. And we always said, yeah, next year. And this year became the year. And I don't know if it was coincidence or not, but it all occurred kind of via the pandemic. And there was more time. There was more time to focus on really structuring something and putting pen to pad of what everything we were thinking about, but actually making it on our own. And it's been great so far. We've had a few consistent clients that come back to us because we're culturally sensitive. We also kind of tell how it is, right? We don't sugarcoat, hey, you're going to have a really hard time in that sector. You're going to have a really hard time going for that grant. Are you sure you're ready for this structurally in your own organization, right? So we try to provide that space for them to learn from what they have, right, from their own capacities. And then we're there again half a year from now when they said, okay, we have this grant now, we're working with these people, but now we're stuck and we don't know how to get to the next thing. And together we figure it out. And I think that's what's been great with the organization that we were able to build up.
That's amazing. I love the work you're doing. I love the work of Frank and Barjal and all the people that are like lifting up, like the communities, and not only in our communities, and like I'm telling you, like Asian communities or like any kind of community, right? That like or unrepresented, like on the top levels. I support that all the way, like African Americans communities. Like I have so many friends in all the world, like US, and they're all experiencing the same, like this glass roof that is there, and it shouldn't be there, because as I see it, it's like everybody should have the opportunity to climb there if they're good enough. Like it doesn't matter like what color of skin you have, or like it should always be. And I'm a great believer and follower of Jim Collins' work. That was like the first book that I ever read that for me was that like a business book that, or actually it's more like a leadership book, like that I could like fully align to. Like my heart took that book and just melted it, because everything I believed in was in that book, but I haven't put it in a structured way that he did. He said like, get the wrong people off the bus, put the right people in the bus, and put the right people in the right seat of the bus. Now, for me, that's how it should be in any organization. Not about like if your daddy went to Harvard with his daddy. I could care less where you studied, I want the best people. I want the best people in the board of directors. I want the best people everywhere, no matter where they come from, no matter what they come from.
Yeah, and bringing it back to sort of maybe our culture or some struggles that we have internally is that as you're starting up your own company, organization, or your own adventure, you tend to bring people who are closest to you, right? A cousin, a friend, somebody. And once you start getting a bit successful, you get a bit more traction, you realize, maybe that friend is not good for that spot. Right? Maybe I have to have him get off the bus and bring somebody else in. But to do that culturally is such a damaging way, right? Like you take it as the leader, you take it really personal. You take it where like, well, no, but this person been with me from the beginning, and how could I do that for this person? And that's where I think it becomes the rub, right? It becomes not about the task at hand or having the best people on the boat or the bus, but it becomes this relationship, right? Like, oh man, how am I going to let this person down? Because so I think culturally that becomes really difficult to do that. Although we get it, we know this person's either not the right fit, or maybe we need somebody to help him or her out, but it becomes really, really hard.
Yeah, I talked with Chris Dyer last week on the first Empowering Monday. We had the same discussion, right, about the bus, right? And he said that you need to do it you need to land them in a good way, something like that, that you need to like transfer them to a new position that doesn't kill their ego, it doesn't kill their persona, but they can't have that responsibility. And that is what, when I mentor entrepreneurs and like these startups, and the first thing I tell them is that you will not always be the driver. Like, you need to learn that you need to get your ego out of you, because you're, as an owner of the shares of this company, you must think like, I have to do the best I can do for these shares to have value. And if you're a bad CEO of 30 people, you need to move aside. It's so simple. You can't be that. Like for myself, I was a CEO of like about 35 as the most. And that was like, I realized that was like my top reach. I don't want to do meetings about people. I am an engineer. I want to have 50% of innovation, creating product, like being the super nerd. And I want to have 50% of leadership. So then usually I say, okay, I move aside to CTO, right? But I'm still one of the big owners of this company. That will not change. And that is why I try to tell them, you need always to have, I believe, like the best person at each bus stop, not only all the way. At each bus stop that you change direction with your company, you need to see if this team or like leadership is the appropriate one to go to the next stop. I take it to that level, And that is what companies have so hard time with, because they have this thing called career, and people get these bonuses and these strange models that is like the company is there to profit them instead of the opposite, right?
Right.
For me, I don't believe that. I believe like the company is always on top of everybody. Doesn't matter like how cool or good CEO you are. For me, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like the company is always numero uno, second and third.
Interesting, because there'll be a lot of people who would want to, at all means, hold on to that title, hold on to that ego, in order not to look bad, and in order not to feel like they failed, right? But you took a turn to say, maybe I'm not the right bus driver at the moment, right? Maybe I need somebody else to take this reign, because I'm maxed out, right? My capacity, what I really want to be doing is not this anymore. I want to be doing half and half, right? So that takes a lot of reflection, a lot of introspection from you and from people who are leaders, right? To say that, man, I just wasn't that good this week, right? And I apologize, but this is what I want to do next week. Or, this project, you can handle that project. That's all you, right? And I'll be here to support you, and I'll back you up and everything. But it does take a lot of reflection and a lot of moving the ego aside for that to happen, right?
Yeah. I can tell you that you can. I say that you can go as entrepreneur of being CEO all the way from like 0 to 1,000 or 10,000 people. If you realize that you're not good at everything, it means you just are a visionary. That's it. And you just do what you do good. If it's tech, you do tech, but you're the CEO, but you're not the CEO administrator. You hire people to do that part. You have the CFO that will take more responsibility, right? But you're not running around only on having meetings about like clients, because you're running an innovative company, right? And that is a misperspective I have from like the industry. They say like, oh, CEO has to do this and this and this. That's wrong. The leader of a company has no title. He's the leader. That's the definition of him, nothing else. The rest is like roles, like stuff like that, like juridics, right? Like responsibilities. But you can still be the number one on the top, having the flag all the way, even if you're introvert or whatever you are, as long as you're letting the best people do the things you're not good at, because you ain't good at everything. That's the first lesson leaders must learn.
Yeah. And other people have other superpowers that make yours even that much better, right? So if everybody's working within their super strength and superpowers, then we're good.
Why don't people more lift their superpowers as a driver for their leadership, like put them in front of them to guide them, And also more interesting question is that why don't they put their not so good sides in front of them to guide them to not do it?
Yeah, I only could think about it when I was up and coming and becoming sort of more in leadership positions, and my ability to speak, my ability to engage and communicate is my superpower, right? And but my ability to be really analytical and in the weeds is one of those things that I constantly have to work on, right? So leading with my best foot was always easier for me, right? Being able to give a speech, being able to rally people and engage and motivate. And when I didn't want to do the analytical pieces, or when I didn't want to do the sort of protocols and those things, I didn't feel that comfortable, right? I didn't feel my best self. So it was easy to keep pushing that off, right? Or leaving that till next week, or leaving that to the next meeting, or at the bottom of the agenda. If we didn't get to it, well, we didn't get to it, right? So I think it's that. I think it's the comfort level and the ability to push yourself a bit more. Now, how I eventually began pushing through that was that I realized that that piece of that super procedural analytical piece isn't my go-to strength. I'm good at it, but it's not my go-to. Is that I surrounded myself with people who enjoy that. I surrounded myself with people who really were passionate about that, and then we could team up, right? And then we could say this, and then it was a group effort, and it wasn't just me trying to balance all the plates together. So that was able to help me out. So I think that's it. I think it's the comfort level, but also the acceptance of saying, I'm not good at this piece. I need other people around me that are better at it than I am.
For me, how it started, like this revelation, right, that I couldn't be good at everything, was that I had been stressing for a long time as a CEO of having to do stuff that I hated to do, like, I don't like paperwork, like I'm an engineer, I want to produce stuff. So giving me all these papers with all this like economy stuff, and then having this kind of like business mentor telling me, like, a CEO, you must be good at this and this and this, like all these things, right? And I couldn't live up to his expectation. And I thought that was the expectations of a CEO, until I found another mentor that told me the opposite. Mm-hmm. He said, Eduardo, why are you doing stuff that you suck at when your strong side is to be the leader and to make people believe? That is why people like want to work with you, because you have that skill. If you take and he said the example of this like economy guy that was guiding me, right? If you put him as a leader, what will you think will happen to this company? And I was like looking at him, and we know the answer. It will fall apart, because that man was really good at economy, but he couldn't lead nobody, like than himself, because he didn't have that skill, So then I realized that I was tripping out for nothing, actually, because I need to let go of the things that I'm not good at. That's it.
Yeah.
Focus.
You were trying to live up to what a representation of the CEO leader was, right? And that's where we're often fishing, right? That people that I work with is, I want them to acknowledge that there's a representation that they're chasing, and see if it's worth it, not worth it for them to chase. Because sometimes it doesn't matter, right? Like, it doesn't matter how much effort you put into it. You were never going to love economical stuff or sort of bookending stuff, right? You were going to always love this piece of it, right? So my suggestion when I meet with people is constantly lean on your strengths and know where you're not good at, so that way you can acknowledge it and brace yourself as much as you can. But doesn't matter how much effort you put into it, how many classes you take, or that's just not going to be your thing.
What are your best advice to a leader that realized that I have reached the glass roof at this company, like a Latino that has struggled all his life inside this company, always worked more than anybody just to prove himself, like to be worthy. And then when he comes to, let's say he comes to leadership 3 level, mm-hmm. and they're giving, he's applying to become, like, let's say CTO, like level 2 level leader, right? Mm-hmm. And they pick somebody else, they pick one of their own,
Yeah, which happens often, right? In most sectors, and right. And the one that I work with primarily is sort of the social services sector, which happens often that people pull in from an alumni from this school, or I went to grad school with this person, and or we came up together, so they end up hiring a local connection versus the one who had been rose to the ranks. I ask people to kind of pause and see if a pivot is right at that moment, right? Pause and see if maybe you invested 10, 15, 20 years in that particular organization or company, but is it the right time to pivot, right? Did you get everything you were going to get out of that place? And is it the right time to seek out something else at another organization? And it's true, because if you really did your work from the bottom up and you're really well known at the sort of middle management or level 3 leadership, is you must have made a lot of great connections in other agencies or in other organizations that they're looking at your work, right? You must have made a lot of heads turn of like, oh, there goes so-and-so from this organization. So they might be more open to giving you that bigger, higher opportunity as opposed to where you were at and felt like they just gave it to somebody else, right? So that's my biggest thing is are you okay with trying to make that pivot now, knowing that the glass ceiling, you're pretty maxed out here, but across the street or a few zip codes down, you might have a bigger opportunity waiting for you and a whole new challenge, right?
Yeah, I think my advice would be like if they turn you down and they gave the job to, like, I don't know, one of their own, what I would do is that I would leave like quite quickly. I would not stay, because if you stay, they will take you for granted. They know that you will continue working double as hard as that person that reach another level of leadership, and you will work more and you will stay there with lower salary or whatever. So sorry.
Yeah.
I think I would pivot for sure, without even thinking about it, and then I would like probably start a company or something. Or that's like Eduardo in a nutshell. I can tell you the story because the story that when I started my first venture was because of our conversation is that story I can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I came to university like the first day in 1998, and I was so happy. Like it was like my mother passed away some years before, and her only wish was for me to become an engineer, because we have talked about it all my life. So for me, it was a big thing. I was fulfilling my own dream and I was fulfilling my mother's dream. It was like this double celebration day. So I was in the student apartment and I met these people. They were in like the TV room, and everybody looked so depressed, like sad. And I asked them, like, why you look so sad? Like, what's up? And everybody, it was like three like people from, it was like two people from Africa, like two people like two Arabs or something like that. It was like this mixed group, right? Like from different continents of the world. They were not Swedish, that is for sure. So I asked them, like, yeah, what's up? And they told me, like, yeah, that we got this project, like our final thesis, all the class, they did it at the same company. And after the thesis was done, everybody got hired except them. Now, the only thing these people had was that I have perfect Swedish, they didn't, Beside that, we were all people of color. And I was so stupid that day that I even asked why, I said, like, why? And they just look at me, and one of them said, like, come on, why are you even asking? Like, it's like,
isn't it obvious?
Yeah. And they were like master student, and I was there my first day. They have spent 5 years of their life for that to happen. They had their right to be angry. They had their right. And in that second, I realized what he was telling me. I decided there and then, when I'm done here, I will ask nobody for work. I will hire these people. And that's what I did, actually. I started my first company after 2 years, 2004 or something. We had, I think we were the IT company with most percentage of foreigners hired in the whole region, actually. Out of 35 people I had, I don't know, like 12 nationalities or something like that. That was, for me, it was my biggest achievement in life I have done, actually. Not all this, the prizes that I won, or like I don't know, like rewards that people have given me or acknowledgement. For me, okay, it was fun to get them. That's it, But what really matters here was my heart was knowing that I did that,
No, of course, and that's great. And that's the hardest part when you, what I was mentioning earlier about the guilt of pushing forward, taking a big risk, and knowing you got to pull people a little bit further that they're comfortable in, right? A little bit further that they're used to doing, and that's great that you. Well, it's unfortunate that it happened, but it's great you had the experience, because if potentially if you didn't have that experience, you wouldn't have seen and thought about, when I get to be my own shot caller, this is what I'm going to do, right?
Yeah, and that's what I think that it's so important with the work that you're doing, and I think all of us should support what you're doing, because we need that, because nobody was there to give me a hand, and I sure needed one many times, I had to like figure it out on my own, and I had this mentor that said to me, like, he's a really big entrepreneur. He built this really big company. He said, Eduardo, you're talking a lot of stuff that is not related to your business. Like, you have a lot of heart for things you want to change in society. He said, my advice to you is become really rich, like Bill Gates or something, and then you can change society. And I went home with his new like kind of mentoring that he gave me, and I slept on what he just said, And then I woke up and said, like, he had teach me so much things about business, about life also, actually. A really, really clever, intelligent person, like built a really huge, successful company. And I said that this time he was wrong.
Yeah.
Because if I wait till I'm nearly dead to try to change the world because I have money,
right,
the only thing I will do is that I will start to donate.
Mm-hmm.
I can't lead. It's not like Bill Gates have this like 1 million followers, right? Like, let's change the world. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
People will follow you out of action mostly, not out of an article that you write. You need to lead the way. So there and then I decided, like, he was wrong. Like I think like every person that has a strong heart for changing society should do it constantly, like in micro levels, constantly, all the time. Like supporting people, helping organization, lifting up articles from other people, like all these things, small things. If we all do that, we will change things. That is how it works.
No, I agree. And two things I want to share there is one, you realize that the mentor you had was really savvy and special in this realm, in the business realm, and powerful there, but he wasn't the right mentor for you in the humanistic piece of it or the whole philanthropy piece, right? So that's often what we do sometimes, that we cling on to a model, or we cling on to a positive person, and they're great for that particular sphere, but we all have a different needs that we have, and sometimes it's philanthropic, sometimes it's education, sometimes it's family, right? So we shouldn't always hang sort of all our hopes and dreams into one model. We should definitely have a variety, because we have different ideas and different wishes. So I'm glad you realized that you slept on it, right? Because you could have really taken that person's word and, 30, 40 years down the line, then began doing work, right? But you didn't. You made your decision, and it's paid off.
I wrote this article called Entrepreneurs on LinkedIn, where I talk about the different type of entrepreneurs, like the money-driven entrepreneur, the vision-driven. I'm like more the vision-driven kind of type. And I don't even use the expression entrepreneurs anymore, because for me, it has watered out. It has no meaning. What does it mean? Like, anybody can register a company. It says nothing, we have a startup. I'm an entrepreneur. Like, but what have you done? Like, what have you created? How many jobs have you made? It's like, and that is, for now, for me, like the most beautiful word is passion. And that's the book I'm writing. It's called Way of the Passionate. Like, how do you succeed in life with passion, despite that you got all the cards wrong in life? And that is my story, actually. I got all the cards wrong. And my opponent, he was having like aces. He even had one extra ace, under his sleeve. And I got all the twos, even,
right?
Yeah. And even a joker that was not valid in the game, and this is like, for me, I can laugh about it now, but it was a horrible experience, right? And then I said, "Oh, Eduardo, you have this like incredible story." I said, "Like, no, this is the story we all live. When you're born, not in the, how can you say, like right circumstances, you will have to fight."
Mhm.
And even if you're born in a, like, let's say, the most rich family in the US, if you have like an abusive father, an oppressive mother, you will suffer anyways. Like, what will all this money help you? You will end up like with therapists, going to psychologists all your life. So I think like life is neither fair, it's neither just. It's just life. And like Celia Cruz, she sings like "La vida es un carnaval." No, yeah, right. Like, and you have to live it, And I think that what you're doing is so valuable. Like, we need more people like you, Dr. Argelis Ortiz, that are helping people, like are lifting up these future leaders of our community. We need them everywhere. So I'm really grateful that you came on to the show. Tell us, give us like a final wisdom, like you want to share with people, like to really take with them today. Personal, professional, you decide.
No, thank you. Again, thank you, Eduardo, for inviting me. The pearl I'd like to share, and this is just kind of coming to me, is see who's around your life that you want to make sure that you bring up and model after, right? So if there's somebody in your life that you want to emulate, somebody in your life that you want to be like, great. But there's also people that you don't know that are looking at you, that you're their role model. So just as much as you're looking forward for people that are role models for you, try to see who's behind and see who you could be role models for, because I think that's really important. Just not to be so forward thinking, but also bring up people behind you.
That was beautiful. Let me just share here. We will look at your, let's see here. I want to share your website so you can tell us a little about it. I really liked when I went into the website. Let's see if we get it now.
Yes.
I love this thing. Like, you start with mission. Like, usually companies, they have like about us, and it's like, and you're like, you don't even read that, you're like, I'm an expert of like web stuff and design and all these kind of things. Like, I have been doing that for 20 years, and when I see something that is good, it's good. You need to focus on the feelings of people that are visiting your website, and this is what I like so much with your website, that I got this feeling, like I want to meet these people, like, when can I invite myself to this company, because that is what I do when I meet great people. I want to meet them,
And that's it. I think that's the intent of what we do. And the mission is first and foremost because we do believe that we want to empower clients. And our clientele are diverse, from Southern California people to organizations from the US. And the intent is that within our expertise, these 5 and 6 people that we have up here, we have a variety of knowledge and years of experience within that social services sector. And we would like to share our goods and bads, because that might help out the next organization. Yeah, a little bit more. We've done executive coaching. We also do training. So everybody here has either in one way or another have worked with somebody in the team, and also has their own glass ceilings that they've broken. So then they're not only talking from education, but from experience, that what they've gone through.
This is diversity. I love this team, man. I haven't even met you guys, but in real life, if I go there, we will go for lunch. I will invite all of you for lunch. Awesome. That is for sure.
Yeah, and if we're ever over there in Norway, we will also connect, Eduardo. I think it'll be great.
Tell us a little bit about your like, what are the services, what are you focusing on right now? I know it's like coaching of leaders, and tell us a little about your services.
Perfect. So we have kind of 3 arms to it. We do training, consultation, and coaching. And the reason it's 3 arms is because sometimes they inform each other. So we have a lens where we do trauma-informed services, where we help organizations making sure that they have capacity to provide services for their clientele. Again, it's sort of nonprofit geared or education based. So if a school or an organization wants to bring on a new program or wants to expand to a new side of town or bring in a new department or even merge with another company or another organization, they kind of hire us to make sure that they're ready for it, and that once they're ready for it, or what are the pieces they might need to make sure that they're successful. Because often people chase the money, right? Oh yeah, that sounds great, let me go chase that. But it ends up folding because they didn't have the right pieces in place. Going back to the whole bus analogy, they didn't have the right people on the right seats, right? They might have had all the right intentions, which is always great, but having the right people is there. So we do that consultation there. And training wise, we end up having a lot of leadership training around communication, teamwork, working with your superpowers, knowing and understanding your own capabilities. It's really reflective, which I think sometimes people like. Others people say, no, just tell me how I fix this person. And like, it doesn't really work that way. More works like you got to make sure you know what you have before you start empowering others, right? And the coaching we talked a little bit about, but it's specifically focused on our personalities and our relationship to people, tasks, and how we learn and how we motivate others. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a lot of mosh podge, and we end up working with some great organizations around here.
I will try a session. You have convinced me at least.
Awesome.
I think many people should try it out. Please contact. And it's LinkedIn, right? That is your primary contact channel?
Yeah, LinkedIn should be it. We're on all platforms, but LinkedIn we're more active. There's my profile, and yes, you could connect with me directly. Dr. Ortiz at silegra.org, DRORTIZ at SILEGRA.org. And yeah, or you could give me a text or a phone call, 323-693-8663.
You heard it right here on eduardo.live, and I will add all the contact information in the description of this amazing live. I have just the final question before I let you go. Silegra, where does it come from?
Great, I'll give you one guess. I'll let you try it.
Alegra is like alegría in Spanish, and silegra is, yes, it makes you happy, or it makes you smile, or...
I love it. And I might borrow that when I give the explanation, but really,
okay.
I grew up sort of, like I mentioned, in Boyle Heights, and a lot of Spanish speakers, and Argelis wasn't a hard word to say for Spanish speaking people. But Argelis for non-Spanish speaking people was really difficult. So to say the R, to say the G was really hard. And somebody just said, oh, you're just backwards, like everything you use backwards. So then I wrote my name backwards, and it's Silegra. And I would start saying, well, can you say Silegra? And people who didn't speak Spanish could say Silegra easily. They could say Silegra really without a problem, but they can't say Argelis, or it's difficult for them to say Argelis. So when I began thinking about the names and what it was going to be, and the focus of being inclusional and multicultural, and I said Silegra has that, in my head, has that story behind it about you don't have to speak Spanish to be able to say it.
That's a good story, man. And I love that I guessed on like alegra, no? Me va a alegrar, no? Sí, me alegra, no? So when I meet you next time, I will say, sí, me alegra. See, yes, it makes me happy, right?
Of course. Thank you, Eduardo.
Yeah, thank you so much. An honor having you here. A great man. You heard it on eduardo.live. Connect, support. We need more leaders on the top from our communities. You heard it. We all know it. We need to do it now.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The same. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.